Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to bridge what I think is a pretty fascinating gap between everyday economic pressures and the inner workings of our own minds. Have you ever wondered how an unexpected auto repair bill might literally change the way your brain processes information, or even how you treat your neighbors? Well, we are going to find out. All right, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to look at the rising cost of driving, what's called the scarcity mindset, ask ourselves if scarcity makes us selfish, explore the great DIY boom, and finally look at cooperation in the garage. Let's get right into it. Starting off with part one, the rising cost of driving and the financial squeeze of auto repair. We've really got to start with the staggering reality of owning a car right now and what it actually takes to keep a vehicle on the road today. $936. According to recent inflation-adjusted data, that is what the average American is dropping every single year just on routine maintenance and unscheduled repairs. That is a massive chunk of change just vanishing from the monthly budget, right? And if that feels steep to you, well, it's because auto repair costs have surged by a massive 43.6% since early 2019. That's way past general inflation. I mean, between technician shortages, messy supply chains, and just how insanely complex cars are getting, a simple trip to the mechanic is getting incredibly pricey. Because of these soaring prices, the average vehicle on U.S. roads today is 12.6 years old. That's an all-time record. People are really just trying to stretch their current rides as far as possible to avoid the crazy costs of buying something new. Now, you might be thinking, hey, going electric is the perfect financial fix. And initially, yeah, it really is. A massive study showed that in those first 3 years, EVs cost way less to maintain, just $77 compared to about $228 for gas vehicles. But, that is really not the whole story. The long-term risk profile is pretty wild. One single EV battery failure down the line, that can run you anywhere from $4,000 to $18,000, which literally wipes out a decade of maintenance savings in one go. Plus, EVs are super heavy, so they chew through tires faster and need really precise wheel alignments. Which brings us to part two, enter the scarcity mindset, and how financial pressure changes our brains. So what actually happens inside our heads when we feel this kind of intense squeeze from all sides? Well, according to a recent academic review, lacking crucial resources like the cash to fix your car triggers what's known as the scarcity mindset. This isn't just you feeling a bit stressed out, it's an actual, literal shift in how your brain processes information. It's a fascinating chain reaction. The initial experience of scarcity directly disrupts your cognitive processes. Then that disruption filters through your own personality and your social environment, which ultimately ends up dictating your actual social behavior. It's almost like a domino effect. Specifically, scarcity causes a couple of major cognitive disruptions. The first is attentional tunneling, which is basically where we hyperfocus and completely obsess over the missing resource, money in this case, and we kind of just tune out other helpful info. The second is cognitive load. This just totally overwhelms our mental bandwidth, forcing us to drop deep, flexible thinking and rely on mental shortcuts or raw emotion to make our decisions. Moving on to part three. Does scarcity make us selfish? Parochialism versus prosociality. How does all that cognitive overload translate into how we actually treat the people around us? This brings up such a fascinating question at the core of human behavioral economics. Does a lack of money turn us against each other, or does it somehow bring us together? Like, if you're financially squeezed by a broken car, are you going to hoard your tools, or are you going to help your neighbor fix theirs? A lot of the time, the data shows that scarcity increases something called parochialism. This is basically the tendency to prioritize your tight-knit in-group while actively shutting out outsiders. So when people feel financially strapped, they might choose to donate exclusively to local charities instead of international ones, just circling the wagons to protect their immediate world. But here's the twist. Scarcity doesn't always make us selfish. It really depends on the social environment. In tight-knit groups where mutual trust is a given, financial pressure actually boosts pro-social cooperation. Why? Because everyone realizes they are literally in the exact same boat and they need each other to survive. When social expectations are shared, scarcity actually promotes reciprocity. There's this amazing study of Afghan farmers that perfectly captures this idea. During the really lean, scarce pre-harvest season, instead of turning on each other,
These farmers actually showed more forgiveness and cooperation than they did in times of plenty. They knew that under intense pressure in a tight society, they were eventually going to need a favor in return. It's a survival strategy.
All right, part 4, the great DIY boom and adapting to the squeeze. So how does this cooperative adaptation to scarcity play out in the modern American garage when auto repair costs are going through the roof?
Well, it triggers a massive behavioral shift. We're talking 26 million self-identified DIY automotive enthusiasts in the US alone right now. As the financial pressure mounts, people aren't just throwing in the towel, they're adapting. They're rolling up their sleeves and learning to do it themselves. Driven by those skyrocketing labor rates and a really severe shortage of pro mechanics, the DIY auto parts market hit a massive $84 billion in 2025, and it's on track to soar even higher, projected to hit $109 billion by 2030.
The really crucial takeaway here is that this DIY boom is not just a hobbyist movement. It's a direct societal coping mechanism. Consumers are staring down a $19 billion professional repair market that is desperately short of over 150,000 technicians. So, to combat the scarcity of affordable repairs, everyday folks are just taking matters into their own hands. Which brings us to our final section, part 5, cooperation in the garage, scarcity, clutter, and community. Let's take a look at the actual physical spaces where all this adaptation is happening. Despite this big rise in DIY repairs, there's a pretty funny yet shocking contradiction. 36% of American garages are so intensely cluttered that the owners can't even park a single car inside them. This kind of hoarding might actually be a physical symptom of that cognitive load we talked about earlier, just a stressed-out response to modern scarcity. So we're really witnessing a dual reality right now. On one hand, garages are the ultimate adaptation space. About 53% of US adults use them for side hustles or cost-saving DIY projects. But at the exact same time, a UCLA study found that 75% of families in Los Angeles use them exclusively as holding pens for material clutter. It's literally the physical manifestation of an overloaded society. Which leaves us with this final thought for today's explainer. As economic pressures force this scarcity mindset on all of us, we really face a choice. Are you going to adapt by isolating yourself, letting that cognitive load fill your space with clutter and your mind with panic? Or, kind of like those farmers facing a lean season, will you open up the garage door, share your tools, and find new ways to cooperate with your neighbors? The next time your check engine light comes on, the decision is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me.